All right, guys. So thanks everyone for joining. For today, we're gonna have an amazing discussion again with Federico. I think you guys know by now how it goes, right? We're here for the entertainment, not for the knowledge.
Of
No,
course.
we're here for both. We're here for both. But what we're gonna do is basically go through two main topics. First of all, I'm gonna quickly go through the challenge page itself because we have listened to your feedback and we have listened to a few of the things that you mentioned about the page that could be improved upon, should be improved upon, and so forth. So we did a lot of changes to make it even more comfortable for you guys to navigate it, and I'm going to go through it, showcase where things can be found, and so forth. And then we're going to go and tackle the dataset itself. So Federico is going to present from his side some of the findings that he already discovered from the data sample itself, tell you a couple of tips and tricks on what to take into account, what are the things that you should be looking out for or looking at, for example. And then I'm going to quickly also cover a few of the visuals. In this case, we're going to be focusing on the map and the network or graph visual. We're going to play around with both a little bit. So just to give you an idea of how these visuals work, how they can be tackled with the data set and so forth. And remember, if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A section so it's easier for us to make sure that we answer every single one of them. And if you do have a question afterwards, after watching the webinar, for example, let's say you're not able to stay for the full recording, not the recording, for the full session today, so you have to switch off, you can afterwards watch the recording and reach us by writing an email to webinars@zoomcharts.com. Yeah, use all the resources at your hand, the academy, the sample reports and everything, and create an amazing report. All right, I think without any further ado, let me just quickly grab the screen again and take you to the page. So if you go to our website right here in the top menu, you can see challenges. In this case, we're going to be analyzing the FP20. Open it up. You can see, so this part hasn't really changed a lot, right? You have the submission deadline, which is the most important thing to understand how much time you have left. You, of course, see the dates and everything. This is where you can still get your developer's license and submit the report. Remember, the reports that you submit can be afterwards also deleted, and you can resubmit a new version of the report. So for the challenge, we permit it, right? So we even encourage you to get the feedback from our team, improve the reports, and submit a new version. What else is happening and what we changed here is if we scroll down a little bit under the first fold, you can see we actually added a sort of like a page contents scroll bars at the side. And you can see all the events in chronological order. So you can see we have the registration open, submission open. Then we see all the webinars that are being planned or have been already planned. You can see this was the first introductory webinar with Federico, my colleague, Christops, and Norman. Norman is actually the one that helped us to provide the sample data set that everyone's using here. And so now we're on this event, and we're going to have another one on the 29th of November. Afterwards, you also, throughout all this time, you have the ability to sign up for the mentoring sessions. 7th of December is the deadline for the submissions. And of course, there's going to be an announcement event, which is something new that we're trying out based on what we've heard from you guys. And what else we did is right here on the page, it's going to be a lot easier for you to find the necessary information because you can quickly choose what part of information is important for you right now. So if you just want to learn about the challenge, click on the first fold, go through it, read about it, adapt. How to participate, there's all the rules and everything, and you can separately see all the judging criteria. Make sure that you go through these ones, right? Those are kind of important, guys.
Yes.
After that, if you scroll down, you can see we try to give you as many options as possible to kind of see what is out there. But what's most important is right here, you also have the data set. If you already have assigned a license for yourself, the developer license, you can see it also here. And again, book a session if you need to. Now, what we did slightly differently for this challenge is we didn't have it before, but now we have added it. So if you click on the Get Dataset, we're actually going to be downloading a zip file. And once you open it, you're going to have two files within it. There's going to be the Excel file, And there's also going to be a PBIX file, which has the data model set up for you. So you can go two routes. You can start completely from scratch, or you can take the template and adapt on top of it. So that's out there to help you guys create the best possible reports out there. Let's see. Rigoberto, yeah, you just mentioned it. So I understand that you have the PBIX with the model. How can I get it? Thanks. So Rigoberto, you can go here to the website, get the data set, and you're going to download the PBIX with the sample file itself. All right. Other than that, nothing else much has changed, right? We're still here. The challenges are here. The submissions are open. There are submissions already coming in. And one of the things that I recommend from my side is try to create the first iteration of the report, not at the very, kind of rushed phase, but try to do it as fast as possible for one particular reason. As soon as we get the submissions, we go through them in a queue, right? So when we get to the report, we actually open every single one of those reports up, and there's a separate few of my colleagues and myself that go through these reports, and we send you individual feedback. So we tell you what are the things that we recommend you to improve upon, what are the things that we recommend you to look into, what things should you reconsider, and these sort of things. So by sending in the first iteration of the report, you are much more prominent to having a fast response and getting more time to enhance the current version of the report. Yeah, King. So you can work with Tableau and other tools, but for the ZoomCharts challenge, it's specifically for Power BI. That is the main rule there. All right. Without further ado, I think, Federico, you can take the floor. See if you can share the screen.
Let me try to do this.
There we go.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But before I start going through this a little bit, just to agree with Avis in that there is no rush. I'm not interested in you producing a report in a week because I know that you are rushing through. Take your time, look at the data, prepare the data, work it out, pick a focus. What is the analysis focus for your report? If you send me a report that just tell me the metrics that they are present in the data, I don't need that, guys. I know that it's there. I can get it out myself. I want you to bring something else. Okay? And now we have been playing a challenge for some time. Okay, let's become a bit more focus-oriented. I'm going to pick up a side of the analysis, and I'm going to base my analysis on that base. For example, we are losing money on tables. Why are we losing money on tables when we are selling a lot of tables? And I'm going to investigate why is that happening. You then might find the solution or the problem, and that problem will help your business. Telling your boss that he sold 7.5 million in revenue, that he knows, the accountant knows, he can check his bank account. There's quite normal metric. We want a little bit more. Okay, now we have the data. We need to have a look, and then we need to start preparing the data. The first thing I do when I open Power BI is go automatically to Power Query, and I create a file path parameter. Very simple. Okay, the parameters in here, you say create new, give it a name, text, any value, and you bring the file path from your computer where your file is located in your computer. Normally, be careful, it can with double commas, beginning at the end, you have to get rid of them, and that is your file path. Now, Power BI knows where to look for the file. Okay, What happens if I move it? You just copy the file path, okay, and paste it here. When you send it to your client only needs to get the data set, okay, get the file path and paste it here, okay? When we have done that, we still need to go to the sources in every table and link. Normally, it comes with the file in there. You need to do it to change it to the parameter, okay? So now they are linked together, and you have to do this for every table, okay? So file path, very simple to use, but it helps you to actually, if you decide to move your data set to a different folder or a different place, okay, the file path is only just copy and paste, and your Power BI file will pick it up and carry on working with no problem. And I know that sometimes we have encountered that problem, that you go to Power Query, oh, it's not working, what happened? And you have to amend, okay, your source. That should be something that you do every time you are going to analyze data. Get used to applying good best practices, okay? Then we are going to go to people. And I want to go, let's start here, okay? So we have person ID, name, date of birth, gender, and ethnicity. Date of birth. I can now from there take how old that person is, okay? And that's what I do in the next step. And that's very simple. You are here, say add column, and select age. Okay, and that is what is come out. And you say, okay, that doesn't look like age. Okay, and then you have the next step. You pick up here, and you see total years. That is this step. So we are here. Age, it gives you this one. We are here, total years, and that will happen. Now, I didn't want to do that, but leave it there. And that is what is actually now I probably messed up my whole thing. We are here. Total year, that's what I wanted, sorry. Now I messed it up. So we are here, and I don't actually want to transform. Total years, insert. Now we are going to run the app, and that's what I do in the next step. That will happen because I messed up everything, okay? Okay, here we are. I rounded off to 2 decimals, if I look at here. And now I have the age. Guys, no worry, sometimes you're going to add, or instead of transforming a table, what happened to me. If that yellow screen scares you, don't worry. Go to the step before and see what happened and fix it. It happened to me all the time because we are working fast. We are not thinking adding a column or transforming. So that should not be a big worry to you. If that happens, just retrace your steps and see what happened. Now we have the age. Okay? So now I can analyze the data by age, not by date of birth. I can see, okay, how many of people from 20 to 35 or 20 to 40 are committing a specific crime or are based on a specific region. Okay? I quite a OCD on having the columns in the way I like it. You see, I reorder the column, I change the time, add the custom. What did I do here? Oh, yes, I created another table, and that is, I created another column with an if statement to call the young adult, mature adult, and senior. Then I realized that I'm not going to use it, so probably I will take it off at some point. Okay, and I prefer that the age is better than going by this other column. Rename the column and reorder again. So I like to have person, name, gender, date of birth, age group, and ethnicity. That is my personal way of having a better understanding of the data that I'm looking at. It makes sense for me. Try to find your way, what it makes sense for you. Okay? And then we are going to go to crimes, and that, let me go to here. That is the first thing. I think we have crime, day, and time. Crime, day, and time. I reordered the column and I put it in the way that I like it. I do the change type. I change the type with locale. Probably, I think when I change that to time only, will becoming a problem. Okay, but what I want to do is from this column, let's carry on doing that for you to know what happened. I create a copy, another column, because I only want to know, now you will see it. I only want to see the hours. There you go. Now I only want to see the hour. I don't need a second of the minute. I want to know what time is it. So I can do a per hour analysis. Okay, again, guys, the only thing you need to get from there is number 2. Okay, hour. Okay, so nothing complicated. But what I want to do is to go to the crime date and create a dynamic table. My calendar table, dynamic, because every time the data set change or more information is added, that calendar table will be dynamic and will adapt to the new year, the new month, and the new date. Okay, and that is very simple. Okay, for that I prepare 2 parameters. This is just this one, I reference it, and it shows you this one. Okay, let me show you an example. If I say they are crime, you can reference, you can do like that. It give me, supposed to give me another table. Can you see it? Let me delete it. That's simple. So I reference the crime table. I delete. I don't need all that. I only want to work on this one. I delete all the other columns. Filter, and I want to show you what filter is that. I want to get the earliest day, okay, on my column is earliest, okay, and it tells you earliest. And in this case, it's only give me 1 day, but I want that day to start from the beginning of the year. We know best practices calendar table, beginning of the year and always end of the year. So again, here, go there, year, start of year. And that is the step I do here. Now I want to convert that to numbers, and I will explain you why in a second. Okay, so I'm gonna right click in here and I'm gonna say drill down, and it give me that. That is now part of a list. I'm not gonna don't worry too much, just follow the step. Okay, and I do the same, and that is my start date, and I do the same for my end date. Okay, clients, remove other column is latest. In this case, the filter is not gonna, let me show you here, is latest. Okay, earliest, the start date, latest is the last date. I filter, and you can see in this example, I have 3 client dates happening on the same day, but I only need 1, so I remove the duplicate. Yes? I calculate day in a year, como I told you before, year in a year, and then I do the same, right click and drill down. It becomes an absolute date or number, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and now I have my start date and my end date. So Federico, what is the next step? Now I have my start date and my end date. I want to create a list of numbers that start in this number. That is a number, believe it or not, that's how Power BI or Excel understand dates and end date. Okay, so I created a blank query. I just show you what I did. That is here. So I created a blank query. A blank query is blank, and they enter equal number from the start date, and this 2 dot is telling in the end language to Power BI, hey, this guy wants 1 number after the other to the end date. I want you to get the start date converted into a number, and they give me 1 after another number after you reach the end date. So that's what this does. Okay, and now we convert it to a table because that is a list, and that is a list of numbers. But what happens if I change the type? There you go. Okay, I get my start date and my end date, and I tell in end language from this converting a number and give me 1 continuing number to the last end date. And at least show us here. I converted to a table. I need to work on tables. Okay, there are numbers. But if I change that to a day, because it's a date, now you have your column. You have your main day column or your date or your calendar table. And that it goes from this day. I don't want to insert there. It will take you all the way to your last day. That will be the 31st of December 2023. And from there, guys, we start building. We need to add columns. From there, I inserted the year. How do I do that? Federico, date, year, that one. Quarter, Federico, from there, give me the quarter of year. I like the Q1. I went to here and I add a column by example. I don't know if you use this one. For me, that is fantastic. Okay, it allows you to give, you don't want to insert it, it allows you to give an example what you're looking for, and he will do it for you. Okay, insert a month. I came here, month name. Now, I don't like to have the full month because it takes quite a lot of space in the canvas in any chart. So I go to transform and I extract first character, and that is the step I do here. I don't need to add another column. I don't want to add another column. I just want one column. So I go to transform and I extract the three first character. Week of the year, and again, I go to column for example, and I tell call it week 1, so it's easier for me to understand or for everybody to understand. Insert the day of the week. That's quite funny because that 0, it will be a number 7. And that is the trick I normally use. There are better ways or another more complicated way, but that is what I do. I go home and in the advanced editor, I find the column I started. And I think it had to be here. That 0 I added there. That 0, it made the column that Sunday is number 7.
Hey, Federico, by the
Yes.
way, you're sharing the just Power Query, so the advanced editor window was not visible.
Okay, sorry about that.
Just for everybody else to understand what was going on.
Okay, I thought they could see it. And that's the problem with not being able to share what you're doing. Okay, in the advanced editor, you find the step, okay, but you can see in the file we put in the link, go and check the step, open the advanced editor, and there is a place where I place a 0. And that it will happen. Sunday is a 0. And then they name, you say, I don't like the 0 to be Sunday. I like to be 7. And then I do a simple replace value. And I say 0, 7. And now I have everything in the way I like it. Okay? Again, I only want 3 days, extract the character. I rename and I change type. And that is how easy you can create a calendar table in no more than 10 minutes, okay? And just adding what you actually need. I tried to add quite a lot of stuff for you to see it, but you might not need this column. You might not need, or you might not decide not to analyze by week, day of the week. Or I'm not going to analyze by quarter. If you don't analyze by quarter, you don't analyze by a column, get rid of. But these 2 steps to prepare the calendar, and that is dynamic, guys, because it's coming from the crying column date. Any new information that will be added here will be passed to here and to here. And that will be therefore passed to this calendar table. Okay? So when you have your calendar table, that is dynamic. Any new data that they input there, this will update automatically. It's not that you have to go back and start adding more information here. It's automatic. Okay? And it takes that step, have 4 steps or 5 steps. You need to only to understand them a little bit. When you have done it 5 times, you just have in your mind and another 4 or 5 steps in here. Perhaps the only thing that needs to be written down is that little thing. Put it somewhere, remember where it is, and you just copy and paste, and that's it. Okay? So let me start sharing this if I can remember. Why I cannot see the sharing button?
The choice of hosting, right? Let's see.
Okay, I got it. Can you see me here now?
We can see you still on the Power Query.
But the whole screen, yes. But I got the screen now.
Yeah.
Let me finally do this one. Yes, I cannot see nothing else. That one. That one. Yes. So.
Yeah, we can see the desktop.
Okay, so I have done my work. Okay, please, the best way, because we have to share time again with David, quite interesting on the charts. Get a copy of the file and see how I do the changes. Remember, you might repeat changes, you might go back. It's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to know. You are able to know all the steps you have to do in Power Query from zero to the last. Fantastic. But if you had to go back and from, no worries. That happened to all of us. Okay. Can you see the data model?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So I downloaded. All these is of course not connected, but that how will be connected.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, have a look, take a screenshot, make a photo, whatever you want to, because if I disconnect everything here, okay, it will be a little bit maybe complicated for you to model it together. Yes, I know we have a bidirectional relationship here. It was necessary, but all precaution has been taken to make sure calculations are right and nothing is wrong because we are using a bidirectional relationship. Okay, so that's me. As you'll see, I like to have everything properly organized. What I'm not going to use, I'm going to hide. If I'm not going to use it, I hide it. I hide. The only thing I left open here is the people involved. And the same for everything else. Why? When I come here, I am going to see what is necessary. I don't need to see 20 other columns, okay, what is not necessary. So I might actually decide to, okay, one of these I might not use it, the name. Probably don't use it, I will hide it. And when everything is organized, you can start thinking about your analysis, okay, and get on with it. I create a calendar table. There are things that I do automatically. I don't think about them anymore. And the first measure I do, because what measure do you do? I just do a record count. I count how many records there in the data set. That's my initial measure. Simple. Count row, crime. Tell me how many are they? 2,500. Okay, I most probably will not use this one, but it allows me to do a quickly measure table and have everything organized. So that is me. Avis, that is to you now. Can you see me now?
Yep, we can see you. Let me share my screen. Looks good. All right. So yeah, one thing's for sure, you already saw Federico went through it, and we all go through it, right? Whenever we, even though we created it, right? It's not like it's the first time for us seeing it. Doing the same things after once again, we still make mistakes. That's just normal. The most important thing there is just don't get discouraged by it, right? You make a mistake, you figure out what you did wrong, and you adapt to it. One of the most common ones is right here, these two tabs. So when you are in Power Query, make sure that whenever you are doing some transformations with the data itself, that you choose correctly whether you want to transform or add a column. Transform means that you're going to change the way that the original column appears, right? So for example, in Federico's case, he got out the age, and then age was converted to years. So if you do that with transform, you're always going to have one column at the end. If you do it with add columns, it means that every single step is going to be a new column. In some cases, you want to do one. In some cases, you want to do the other. It all depends on the use case that you are building there. Because in some cases, you might want to have those intermediate steps for something else. All depends on what you're trying to achieve there. All right. As far as the visuals, like I said, in this case, we're going to play around a bit more with, give me a second. There we go. All right, so in this case, like I said, we're going to play around a bit with the map visual and with the graph visual. I added some other visuals here just to kind of have at least something to play around with, right? Because you want to have things dynamic rather than static, so you want to have something more on the page. But I went with a very basic concept. So what you see here is just a couple of KPIs, a couple of metrics, a couple of dimensions visualized in different ways. So what I did with the map visual. So for the ZoomCharts map visual, one of the most important things to remember is that you need a longitude and latitude, and that is what we provide you for this specific use case. So you already have that, you don't have to worry about it, they're right here. Then afterwards, you can figure out what else do you want to add on top of the visual. So in my case, what I did with the values is I summed up, or not summed up, but counted up the crime IDs by the distinct values. So that's one of the things. And then I also categorize them based on the resolvement state, meaning whether they're resolved or not. So that gives me a quick understanding of, okay, so these are the sort of little clusters where the donuts are appearing, and I can understand what's the relative scale of solved and unsolved crimes. Now, what else is important for the map visual? Don't forget to play around with the node settings. Under the node settings, you can define how every single position is going to look like. So let's say instead of having a circle all around it, you actually want to have something that displays a little bit more nicely when you go down to the lowest level, which is, I think in this case, like this, yeah. So you can see we have these circles, and they're splitting up into individual circles. What's really happening here is I'm using the max clustering zoom level. And what that allows me to do is to define a level of the zoom, which after the reaching, I actually split the clusters. Because if I leave it at 18, by default, it's going to be on 18. 18 is the highest level of zoom possible. So if I zoom into it, you can see I still have those donuts around these individual nodes, but since there is just a single crime type, it's going to always be either solved or unresolved. So it doesn't make sense for me to keep the donut there, and I want to split them into individual crimes based on the values. So that's what I'm doing there. And you can see like that. If I zoom out a bit more, you can see these clusters are now staying here. So you can play around with these values and just define, okay, what happens on the level 15, what happens on level 3, what so forth. That is just always to figure out how you want to showcase the map. Because the one thing you want to make sure you do with the map is you don't over cluster the information. You don't want to come to a map which just looks like a massive, basically a cluster of little tiny nodes which are impossible to read. So having the clustering capability and defining the zoom levels is something that allows you to have it nice and neatly. Now, in order to play around with the max clustering zoom level, I always recommend you to go under toolbar and enable this little thing right here. It's a small little thing called zoom numbers, right? It might seem redundant, but when you're trying to figure out which zoom level am I on, this is a lifesaver. Because otherwise, if you wouldn't have it, basically my experience would be I would zoom out to level 0 and then just go. So, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And instead of doing that, just enable zoom numbers and you're always going to know what level of the zoom are you on. Once you finish the report, you can just disable it because the end user doesn't need to know about it. But for you as a developer, this is something that helps you to create the chart to do exactly what you want to. Now, what else is there is, don't forget that you can play around with the base layer. The base layer is the actual map that you see behind things. So what we're doing is we're using OpenStreetMaps. And what I'm also doing here is I'm defining the min zoom level. Now, why is this important? For example, if I set this on 0, and then I just simply switch between the pages, so the map visual kind of loads in a fresh load of the data, right? So we go here, and you can see this is the amazing view that I get, right? Very interesting. A single dot on top of UK. I zoom into it, okay, still dot, still dot, still dot. Now you see how interesting that was, right? So what you do is you find a viewport, again, the zoom level, and in this case, okay, actually 11 seems like a decent zoom where the data is being split up. I can still understand where am I located? Because if you zoom in again a little bit closer, you can see that that's the central London. So based on that, you can understand where you are. But these little things help the end user, once you give them the report, to just feel a bit more comfortable with it, right? Because they don't have to do 10 initial interactions just to get some information. So you can play around with those things. You can play around with the autofocus. Autofocus basically means that wherever the data goes, the chart adapts to it. So for example, if I go for something like this and say I'm interested, let's go into a monthly view. Things are getting calculated. And today my PC decided that it's going to be slow. So if I start to filter things out, you can see how the graph always moves to one side or the other. It adjusts the zoom level and everything to make sure that you are not looking at something that's not visible in the viewport of the chart. So you're always looking at relevant data. What else for the map visual? You can, of course, play around with the categories, for example, that you put in here. I went with a simple approach of either it's resolved or unresolved crime. So it helps me to understand what's really happening there. But in the same manner, you could have used, for example, the crime types. You could have used the ethnicity. You could have used the time of day, for example. Choose any other category that you want to have there that you think provides some additional context for the end user. Because remember, as Federico already mentioned this also in the introductory webinar, it's not about just showcasing, the raw data that's already in there. It's all about figuring out what else can I add on top of it and what can I get as an insight from it. So even these little things like, for example, Federico got the age, right? In my case, what I did here is I went with a similar approach, but I went with the time of day. I want to understand if the crimes are more often to happen in the early morning hours, whether it's the late evening, whether it's the night, or so forth. Because as soon as I click on one of them, right, that passes out a filter, and I can see, okay, so evening crimes are actually located more around here. We can see the timeline, how it gets filtered out, and everything. In the same manner, I could, of course, for example, added, instead of just the time of day, I say, okay, I actually want to see also the physical hours underneath it as the second layer. So I just take the hours, move it as a second layer and say evening. Okay, we can actually see that in 23 or 11 p.m. is when most of the crimes happen. So when based on that logic, you start to investigate and see, okay, how are things actually connected? What's happening? What time of days? What periods of the year, whether it's, summertime, winter time, autumn, spring, whatever it is. You as an analyst always have the possibility to enrich the data. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it, but you can do it if it allows you to provide some additional context to the user. All right, that goes for that, for the map visual. If you do have any other questions, if some of you have already played around with it and you want to just know something, like I said, don't be afraid, post questions in the Q&A section, and we're going to go through it and I'll try to answer every single one of them. If not, send them to the webinars at ZoomCharts.com. If Sabina, maybe you could write in the chat the email just so everybody gets the right one. You can send us your questions there and we can go through them. Now, go ahead.
I really like the sample of the early day, evening, and time because I want you guys to think about, okay, if I know when more crimes are committed, I can allocate my resources better. I can say, okay, in the morning, we are going to have only 10 police officers because we have a low rate of crime. But in the evening, I'm going to increase it to 30 or 40 because we have a bigger rate of crime. So that allows you to allocate resources in a proper manner to have the necessary teams. Okay, in this case, to prevent crime. Remember, all that little thing are the important things.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. That was a great example.
And in this case, because the one thing that we want you to learn from the challenges is there's a lot of different ways on how you can do things. In this case, what I did is instead of using a Power Query, I just used the switch function. And trust me, I know when you first some of you, when you look at this is going to be like, yeah, that's not that simple. Trust me, I know the feeling. When I started off with DAX, when I saw the first switch function, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go into Power Query and figure out a way on how to do this. But the more you start to work with things, the easier things are going to get along the way. So don't be afraid to just play around with things, see what we've done with our reports, because you're going to have also this sample report as an example. You can go through the Power Query, you can go through all the columns, you can see what we did, how we did it, and that's the main idea about it. Like Federico also mentioned, right? Remember, guys, when he mentioned about hiding the unnecessary columns, there's a reason for that. Because, for example, if I type in crime ID, I have 2 of them. So the question is, which one am I supposed to use, right? And in this case, there's just 2 of them. If I just type in crime, you can see, well, there's a lot of things related to crime. So hiding things that are not necessary from each of the tables, because every single time you create a connection, it means that in one of the tables, one of the columns becomes obsolete. It is there just to create a connection. You don't need to have 2 crime IDs simultaneously. One of them is enough. So small things like that. Now, as far as this one, I've used the graph visual. And the graph visual I used for the purpose that I wanted to see how actually people are connected to different crimes. And what I used for the data here is I used the name of the person that's involved in the crime with the crime ID itself. So for example, if I say that, okay, I actually want to look at crimes where 5 or 6 people were involved, and I'm specifically interested in shoplifting because that's interesting, right? And I want to see the offenders. I can see the crimes where a lot of people were getting involved. In this case, we can even see that there's a crime where 3 people were offenders at the same time, and that's a shoplifting case, right? So these little things just come out of it, and you start to play around and see, okay, so what's really happening? Because if I just filter out by the crime type on a first layer, all these crimes are going to have 5 or 6 people connected, but what doesn't help me here is I don't know which one of them is the victim, who's the offender, who's a witness, who's who, right? All I can see is just that these, in this case, 6 people were involved in this. I don't know their relationship with the crime. So this could be handled again with different cases. I could also add, for example, different icons for offenders, different icons for victims, and so forth. That's up to you, so you can start to play around with it. What we did is we added you in the table right here. You can see the images needed to be pasted as a base 64. And the purpose why we did this is so you have an example at hand. But then afterwards, you can, of course, enhance these, add extra images, and use all of them and showcase whatever kind of flow you want to investigate there a lot deeper. Now, when it comes to showcasing networks and graph visuals, there's usually a quick sample I want to demonstrate, because one of the most common questions is, so what's the difference between the network and the graph, right? Because they're both relationship type visuals. And this is the sample that I usually use. There's also actually a blog post. I don't know, maybe Sabine, you can see if you could find the blog post where we talk about the network and the graph differences. That would be great. So I'm going to go with a very basic use case. I'm going to say that A goes to B, B goes to A. Value 1. Nothing super complex, very basic use case. So BMOL, the name of the visual was Drill Down Graph Pro Visual. And here is going to be the difference. So first of all, I'm going to add a network visual. It doesn't matter if it's Pro or PIN version because the data model they support is the same. This is how you're going to see the network visual. If I take exactly the same data, but I add it to the graph visual, which is also a network type of data, but you can see the setup is different. You specifically define the source nodes and the target nodes. And if I add value on top of it, you can see that instead of having 4 nodes, I have only 2 nodes. Now, why is that? That is because the network is meant for categorical data exploration. And what it does is, if I take this and basically make it a table, it works like this. Let me just have the table here. So what the network does is it goes through every single column and is looking for unique values. How it identifies the unique values is it adds the prefix of the column name to the value that's in the cell. So essentially you have 4 nodes: source A, source B, target A. And that is why A and B, even though it's just a single letter, in the network chart are not the same node. You can see these are 2 separate entities. For the graph visual, it's a different approach. The graph visual basically uses think about it as an Excel file, and you use a lookup function or an index match function, right? It indexes these nodes, and that name is the unique identifier for the value that's in the cell. So it's a bit of a different approach. They're both relationship type of graphs, but they achieve completely different results. So if you just want to have a quick understanding of how different categories are related, the network is the way to go. If you want to go in more depth and understand, okay, and specifically define actually who is connected to what, how are they connected, and so forth, use the graph visual. Now, there's one thing that usually throws people off a little bit, and this might, be a little bit intimidating at first. The graph has 26 different fields for a visual. And I think a lot of you are going to be like, well, that's quite a lot. That's true, but the only 3 mandatory fields are source, target nodes, and values. Everything else is completely optional. So you can build a graph with just 3 columns. That's it. You don't need to use all 26 of them. That's not necessary. Don't worry about it. They're there because we wanted to build a graph that's able to adapt to any changes you do with the graph, or with the data actually. So you can see we support things like images, colors, labels, shapes, category classes, radiuses, focus nodes. Then we have the same settings for the target nodes. You can customize the links with their colors, numerical labels, textual labels. There's just a bunch of different settings that we wanted to give you as a data-driven option, instead of just, going through formatting options and doing this all again and again and again and again. Now, another thing I did with the graph visual is something that you can also play around sometimes. And that is, under the advanced settings, you actually have this functionality here called node count limit. And what this allows you to do is to define the number that is essentially the top rows that you're loading into the visual, so it doesn't become too overcrowded. The way it works is it's always going to go in an order. So it's the top 1,000 rows, for example, in this case. If I type in as 10, those are going to be the top 10 rows in the data set. So the reason why I'm doing this is it sometimes can help you with the performance. Because never forget that even though your machine is going to be, for example, running, let's say the report just, without any hiccups or any issues, somebody else who's in an older machine, and Power BI is a resource heavy consuming software itself. So somebody with an older machine could be starting to struggle. So having these small little things helps to create a report that even they can use. And of course, what we also did here is we allow you to add a custom message so that the user understands, okay, I see that there's actually supposed to be 2,000 nodes. Why do I see only 10? Well, the custom message tells me currently showing only top 1,000 because I had it there, but I would type in top 10 to improve the performance, for example. So these things. Now, for the graph visual and the network visual, I know we're starting to run out of time. One thing that I would also highly recommend to you guys is don't forget that there's a bunch of different other resources. And one of them is the Academy. So the ZoomCharts Academy is a free resource that all of you can use at any given time. It's basically a list of pre-recorded videos. And unfortunately, you're not going to get away from my beautiful face because I'm going to be in those as well. But hey, at least a familiar face is a good face, right?
It's a really good face.
It's a really, right?
Whoever say the contrary, I see you later.
That's exactly how it goes. But here in the topics, you just find the Drill Down Graph Pro. You open it up and you can see, see, that's the beautiful guy there. So you have a lot of different videos where we go through intros, overviews, other interesting features, all the formatting options and everything. Does it cover everything that's possible? Probably not. That's not the idea of the Academy. The idea for the Academy is to give you enough knowledge so you can work with it. And then if you have those edge cases, you can always reach out to us and we can figure it out together.
Cool.
All right. But yeah, the main idea here is just to kind of have an understanding of not just how they're laid out on the map, but also to understand, okay, but how are these crimes and people actually related to each other, right? So for example, if somebody has committed a crime in central London, has he committed crime also in other regions, for example?
I can tell you that the police in the UK use a very similar software to actually basically create a network when there is an organized crime that be investigated. Who is talking to you, what the address, and you can see all the link or that criminal organized group map in a very similar software, but there is a shard. Okay, so I guys, that is going to be used. So play along with it and see what can you do with it. And the map is very important. I will take into consideration how AV is filtering the data, so you don't get a vast, okay, number of nodes or results in your analysis, but you can see more clear, okay, what are you trying to achieve. And again, if you are not going to use it, get rid of it. It's not necessary. I think there is a question from Alejandra Roa. Yeah.
Opening it up. Hi, which precautions have to be considered when using a bidirectional relationship in Power Query? You want to handle this, Federico? Since
I handle the first part. One is ambiguity. Okay, Alejandra, if I get into it, I can drive you crazy in 5 minutes. So one is ambiguity, because the data go right and left. Okay, sometimes Power BI get a little bit lost, and it can throw wrong information. Okay, it can give you wrong number. Why? It's because the ambiguity and because numbers are crossing. Okay, in the path there is no unique path. I'm going from here to here. Now they are crossing over, and sometimes probably I get a little bit confused and throw you wrong number. Performance. And the second big important is performance. Performance get affected because this cross data, the model become bigger. You might not see it, but it become bigger. Therefore, it's slowing down the report. And if you want to go deeper into it to understand a bit better, that is probably a little bit of 2-hour reading, different articles to understand a little bit better. What we try to do is try to avoid it. And when we have no other option but to use it, okay, we make sure everything that we do later is sound, okay, so that the relationship is doing the work and is not complicating anything for us.
Yep. Because one of the most annoying type of relationships, there are cases where they are needed, but is the universal combination of having a bidirectional connection with many-to-many as a cardinality. There are cases when those are needed, but those are the most tricky ones, because usually measures and everything goes completely bananas when those are used. You have to tailor the measures specifically for those cases.
And then you get complete. You have to start doing measures to work with the relationship. You are in the wrong place, my friend. Avoid it. It's as simple as that. Yes, it can be done. You have measure for that and measure for the other, but you can avoid it for the better performance or your report. Please do. Okay, you might decide to flat down the data model, create another table in between them to do something better. Do go that way. Try to avoid going this relationship and using that to fix it. There are moments that you cannot avoid it and you have to go that way, but if you can, avoid it.
Yep.
There is one more question for you, Avis.
Yeah, so Bimal asked what would be the alternative to the tree map visual? Can we change the icons of the graph visual? So the alternate for the tree map visual, it really depends on what specifically do you want to showcase. Because if you think about it, if I just convert the same donut for a tree map, it's the same idea, right? You're essentially...
Don't use it. Bimar, don't use it. That is a donut chart. You get a frying pan, get a shown the donut chart and smash it with a frying pan, and you have a tree map. It's all flat. Don't use it.
Because the tree map essentially is the same donut chart, but fully expanded. Because you're always going in smaller and smaller and smaller categories. Is it a great visual? Certain cases, yeah. Every single visual is a great visual if you use it correctly. But yeah, one of the alternatives would be if it's a donut chart. The other one would be based on the values itself. Could be something like a column chart maybe. But it depends on what numbers are you focusing on. Is it the percentage of the whole, or are you focusing on the total absolute value?
Yeah, Bimal, I go over 60 report in my Portfolio Novi Pro. Go and check. If you find one of those, come back to me. If not, that's why I'm telling you, don't use it. Believe me, if we have many complaints with donut and pie chart, and these are fantastic ZoomCharts, donut and pie chart, they work in a different way. If you put one of those, you're getting yourself complicated because you cannot see the data. Okay, yeah. So avoid it.
And as for the second one, can we change the icons for the graph visual? Sure. So the way that the graph loads in the icons is from the data source we have right here. And if you go to the Power Query, so in this case, we actually had it under people, I think. Yeah, you can see there's a column right here for the icon that references actually it from this one. If you change the values here, you can get any other image out there. The only thing that to remember is that the images need to be a base 64 encoded version of it. Yes, we do have a lot of questions like why do we not support just having a direct URL to the image? Because that is not allowed for certified visuals. If we would allow you to use just direct URL images, we would not be able to get security certification for the visual, because then we have to connect to a third-party resource, and that is restricted by Microsoft. So the only way on how to overcome this is by using base 64 as an image encoded version.
Give me a second. I'm saying something.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm writing something very fast. And copy. Hopefully it will go work. Oh God, it didn't go. Okay, I'm gonna put another comment here. Yeah, you got it there in base 64.
Yeah. So
just copy the image and drop it there. I give you the code. Copy the code, put it in the Excel URL, and that's it.
Exactly. Or if you're lucky enough, you can actually find some cases where the URL is already a base 64.
Yep.
So in those cases, just copy it from there. If not, you just take the image itself, save the image as a copy. For example, I'll do it on the desktop right here. Then I go to this one. I upload desktop. Image one, was that? No, that wasn't the one. I think the format of the image was invalid. It happens as well. PNG, yeah, that's nice, very nice. Desktop, there we go. Upload the image, show code. For using image element, copy it to clipboard, go to your Power BI file, open Power Query, people icons, and I'm just going to replace one of the values. I'm going to replace it with this. And it doesn't want to work with me today. You know how it is, guys, right? Whenever you want to showcase something in a live, it's going to be like, nah, not today. But that's the approach you should take. Just basically change these values right here. Or if you want to add more, you can always create a separate table and add more.
Yes, I normally do that. If I get another table, I make sure I have all the names of whatever picture I'm showing, so I can connect that table to the data set, and in Excel I input the URL, no problem.
All right, I guess one more. Got it, thank you. No worries. All right, if there are no other questions, I guess thanks for joining, everybody. I hope it was entertaining and, informative as always. Most important part, informative. Entertainment comes afterwards.
Yeah, we have party in Monaco.
Yep. Once we all make it, we'll meet up there. But until then, let's just participate in the challenges and make the best reports possible. Other than that, I'm gonna quickly once again also, Sabina just posted in the chat, yeah, please guys, for the sake of me and Federico and for our happiness, let's say like that, please submit the feedback that you get from these sessions. Was it useful? Was it not useful? Was it interesting? Was it boring? Do you want to see something else? What do you want to see? Help us understand how to improve these sessions.
Yes, please, just fill it up. It takes 2 minutes. There are 3 questions or 4 questions, so it takes no more than 20 seconds. And that helps us to shape what direction we take in coming webinars.
Yep. Because at the end of the day, I think the biggest kind of gainer from all of this would be you guys, because you would see what you want. All right.
Fantastic. Okay.
Have a great and amazing day for everybody, and I'll catch you on the 29th of November when we're going to have our next workshop.
See you around, guys. Thank you for coming.
All right.
Talking to you, Avis.
Always a pleasure. See ya.
Bye-bye.